Welcome to week 4 of nutrition and menopause. I trust that you have found weeks 1 through 3 to be helpful and that you have been able to begin to practice some of the concepts we've talked about, some of the lifestyle changes, by setting some goals using your SMART Goals worksheet. If circumstances have made it difficult or challenging you to implement some of these practices, it is certainly not too late. You have learned a lot. It's never too late to begin. You will have lifetime access to this program. So use it. Go ahead and print things to put in your binder and use it as a great resource to slowly add and implement some of these changes. Remember, taking the bite of an elephant is much easier than trying to sit down and digest and eat the whole thing in one sitting. All right, this week we're going to look at nutrients and weight management. So we'll look at key nutrients to add to your diet and some foods to eliminate to support hormone balance. And we're going to discuss also the all-important ways to manage your weight in a season of life where this can be super challenging. All right, some foods to avoid are some spicy or overly spicy foods and caffeine-containing drinks and foods. They can aggravate women during menopause, creating things like hot flashes during perimenopause and menopause. Not to eliminate these completely from your diet, but maybe having some self-awareness, noticing the effects when you do have maybe more caffeine than is advisable, or eating an abundance of spicy foods because they can aggravate some hot flashes. Knowing this is a good idea, it's a good idea to avoid or to limit some of these triggering foods and beverages. So we're going to look at some tips on how to do that, how to avoid spicy foods. You can use a lot of different other flavor enhancers. Using lots of herbs is a great way to add nutrients and a healthy way to add flavor to your food. Fresh or dried herbs, optimally we use fresh. If a recipe calls for 1 teaspoon of basil, you would add 3 teaspoons or a tablespoon of fresh. If it calls for dried as a teaspoon, you're going to triple it and use that as your fresh your measurement for fresh, adding 3 times the amount of dried. Cooking with alliums, onions, garlic, shallots, green onions, those add good flavor as well as some nutrients. They help, they're nutrient dense, and regular consumption of all of these, the herbs and alliums and bell and poblano peppers, can lower cholesterol and improve immune function. They can combat stress, making things helpful for inflammation in your body, aiding to support anti-inflammation. So inflammation. So using these natural, healthier methods of adding flavor to your food have some good health benefits as well. So cooking with lemon juice or vinegar using a citrus or an acid adds good flavor. Cooking with vinegar and other acid offers benefits. They are flavor enhancers, but they also change the food a bit, giving them additional sort of a nice little tang or bite, a freshness or sharpness. So incorporating sweet spices by using something like fresh or dry ginger can also be very flavorful. Ginger is great for the immune system and for digestive health. I'll be adding some recipes that use fresh ginger in your portal before the course is complete. So I'll be adding recipes throughout the course of the course. I know we're in throughout the entire course. So I know we're in the 4th week, but I will also probably continue to add things, and you'll get notification when that does occur. Caffeine. So ways to avoid caffeine that can contribute to hormone imbalance. You want to, while some caffeine is completely fine, we want to make sure that it's not getting in the way of adequate sleep. Sleep and sleep quality. We'll talk a little bit more about sleep further down in this week's session. So pay attention to your sleep quality. Do you wake refreshed and energized, or do you wake sleepy, tired, maybe earlier than you'd like to? I will be putting a lot of different handouts in your portal. The one in particular is an article I wrote entitled Sleep as Medicine. You'll have access to that and several other worksheets that might be helpful as you look at bedtime routines and rituals. Sleep is super critical for hormone balance and stress reduction in your menopausal years. If sleep is a challenge for you, feel free to schedule a free consult with me to discuss how to optimize your sleep. There'll be opportunities to a link for how you can schedule that consult through in your portal. All right, sipping on herbal tea. So there's some delicious herbal teas out there. I use loose teas. You can use a bagged tea, but focusing on ones that don't have caffeine or very small levels of caffeine. They also had some phytonutrients that are beneficial for you. And if caffeine is something that you feel like you maybe are consuming too much of, begin to taper off slowly. You don't want to do it too quickly because then you're less likely to sustain that. So begin to slowly maybe do a half calf for your second cup, or just looking at ways to gradually sort of cut back. A lot of other, there are some great options for soft drinks as well that have caffeine, using unsweetened fruit infused seltzers, or making a flavorful water with either vegetables or fruits. Citrus, cucumber, berries, great additions to put in a water jar and keep in your fridge. All right, let's look at some nutrient dense foods. So these are things that we want to make sure that we're getting enough of, because they are abundant in vitamins, minerals, fiber, which is critical, and phytonutrients. All of these are super important during menopause. So the nutrient dense foods we're going to look at include vegetables and fruits, whole grains, nuts and seeds, legumes, and the all important protein, focusing on lean protein like fish, poultry. So eating more nutrient dense foods supports overall health during perimenopause and menopause. So think Mediterranean type diet. Foods and recipes. I'll be including quite a few. Well, you've been getting some already, but you will continue to get several in your portal, and I will continue to add even after the completion of the course. Here's a couple of tips for how to increase the nutrient density of your food. So planning your meals out really increases the likelihood of serving those foods, especially when we are faced with challenges such as a busy schedule. So having these meals organized up front, even if they're not made in advance, is a good first step to eating more nutrient dense foods. I have a course or happy to talk to you about meal prep, meal planning, how to effectively put into place at least 3 good, healthy meals a week without spending hours and hours in the kitchen. So consider healthy convenience products as well. I know that many of us, many folks don't really particularly care to cook, or don't want to spend a whole lot of time cooking simply because they don't have the time or the desire. So there are some convenience foods that are going to be better than buying, pre-made foods or fast food pickups. So things like a bagged leafy greens, canned beans, frozen berries, crunchy legumes, they can make it easier to eat more nutrient dense foods. Riced cauliflower, you don't have to rice it yourself. And you can buy that in frozen. So there's plenty of good ways to quickly add some good nutrient dense foods to your diet. Plant foods are super important. Most of us don't eat enough plants. I'll put some information about phytonutrients in your portal, but phytonutrients are basically plant nutrients, and we need 7 to 9 servings of those a day. Most people get maybe 2 or 3. So adding vegetables to stir fries or to pasta dishes on a salad, find some creative ways to add fruits and vegetables to what you're already eating. Blending leafy greens into a smoothie, topping a piece of toast with hummus or avocado or a nut or seed butter. So those are good ways to add plant foods as well as maybe some protein in some cases with these. All right. So, boosting the flavor of vegetables, whole grains, and legumes with other ingredients and other methods of preparation. So, we talked about already herbs, spices, citrus, and alliums such as garlic and onion and shallot. So, those are great additions to add to your plant foods. And then always consider adding one extra plant food on the side, an extra side serving of a plant food. Serving plant based foods as side dishes is an effective way to add flavor, texture, and nutrition to your meals. So, lots of options and methods of preparation, ranging from things like quick roasted vegetables to hearty grains and creamy salads, with many dishes suitable for vegans and vegetarians. So, a lot of these can be made ahead. Roasting a huge sheet pan of vegetables that you can then either use cold on a salad or quickly warm them back up. Pre-cooking grains for the week ahead so that you have rice, quinoa, um, uh, other grains prepared ahead that you can add and make a bowl out of. So think about how many servings of phytonutrients a day you are currently getting, plant nutrients. So think eating a rainbow of color, and I'll be including a serving plant food, a guide to serving plant food on the side. Um, in your portal, and it'll be categorized by preparation methods such as like steaming, roasting, braising. So the different methods of preparation and cooking foods add, can embellish. Are two of my very favorite that are quick, easy, and add a good bang for the buck in terms of flavor. All right, postmenopausal women are at higher risk for heart disease and osteoporosis. So, we're going to look at some key nutrients that play a role in heart and bone health before, during, and after menopause in order to sustain healthy heart and bone, knowing that as estrogen depletes, our bone density depletes. So, it's just a fact. Unsaturated fats, also known as heart healthy fats. They are found in mostly plant foods like oils, avocados, nuts, and seeds, and fatty fish like salmon, herring, sardines. So eating those foods that are high in unsaturated fats as opposed to saturated fats is associated with lower risk of heart disease. Calcium. So in today's age, a lot of people aren't drinking milk or staying away from too much dairy for a lot of different reasons, which is a topic of conversation for a latter date. It's a mineral that the body uses to build and maintain bone health and other functions. So it's found in dairy products, but it's also found in canned fish with bones, dark green leafy vegetables, in tofu, and in some fortified beverages. So you can also, we can talk about supplements at a latter date too as well. In some cases, as we age, supplements can be a good addition to increasing our nutrients, or a good way to increase our nutrient density. Vitamin D, super, super important, not only for bone health, but also for mental health. It helps, vitamin D helps the body absorb calcium. So they need to be sort of married together. And some non-dairy products like fortified cereals, egg yolks, fatty fish, contain good sources of vitamin D. Well, an egg is a dairy product, but and I'm not saying milk is necessarily always bad, but we have gotten advanced information about some of the proteins in whole in milks that are harder to digest for certain people. The body can make vitamin D through sun exposure. The most critical time to get that sun exposure is before 10 a.m. every day. So 10 minutes before 10 a.m. is sort of like a tried and true rule. I try to practice. It doesn't matter if it's cloudy out; you're still getting that vitamin D. And it's not always easy to get. And as we age, it's very important because foods and sun exposure may not always be the most reliable way to get vitamin D. You might want to consider vitamin D supplement. I'm happy to chat with anyone that is interested in that. Also, give you access to my portal for Full Script, which is a practitioner portal where you can access discounted supplements that are of high quality. So it's super important to pick supplements, to know the quality of your supplements, how they're tested, how they're manufactured. So having some good information, because there's so many different supplements out there that are not regulated. So before, during, and after menopause, women should strive to eat food sources of unsaturated fat instead of saturated fat, calcium, and vitamin D. All right. I'm happy to chat with you, as I said, about any other supplements if you feel like you're not getting enough nutrients in your diet through food. Food is always the very first source of ingesting these nutrients, but there are times and seasons in our life when we need a little boost. So I'm happy to again share with you a link to my Full Script account where you can order quality supplements at a discount. Managing weight, gaining weight is a common symptom of perimenopause and menopause. It does not have to be that way, but it does require some intentional planning. I'm happy to help you with that. If you so desire, you can absolutely, with some very small amounts of information, with discipline and sitting down, craft a custom plan for yourself. But I'm happy to help you do that if weight management is a struggle for you. If weight loss or weight management is a goal for you, then the following strategies might help you in supporting weight management. So we're going to choose foods and snacks and meals that are balanced with all the macronutrients. The macronutrients are protein, fat, and carbohydrates. So protein is critical for helping us stay full in between snacks. Or excuse me, not between snacks, between meals. So focus on an eating pattern with nutrient-dense whole foods that are high in fiber. Fiber helps contribute to fullness in between meals and snacks as well. Um, so for women, you probably have no idea how much fiber you're supposed to get. I would say the average person gets maybe 5 to 10 grams of fiber a day. Women need a minimum of 25 grams of fiber a day. That takes work and intention. I'll put in your portal some fiber-rich foods, some cheat sheets for high-protein foods as well as high-fiber foods. Those are two super, super important things to focus on during menopause. Fiber. I felt like there was something else I was going to share with you about that, but it helps to contribute to fullness and is super healthy, super important for us during menopause. Another thing to always be mindful of is avoiding at all possible avenue, everywhere that you can, avoiding ultra processed foods because they contain excess calories from saturated fat, added sugar, and they bait you basically. So they increase your appetite. While you might think they're going to keep you full, they actually sort of tease you to wanting more of what you just had, more of that ultra processed food, more saturated fat, or more sugar. So being really mindful of trying to eliminate ultra processed foods from your diet. Physical activity. So this is, of course, a great way to manage your weight. Strength training is super critical during menopause. It counteracts the rapid decline in bone density and muscle mass that happens simply because our estrogen plummets. It reduces osteoporosis risk and it burns fat, improves cardiovascular health, and maintains independence by building functional strength. We've been able to reach and move and pivot and turn as we get older. So recommended routine includes 2 to 3 sessions a week focusing on weight strength training moves. I'm happy to provide support for your individual needs at any point that you want a little bit further direction in physical activity, ways to manage your weight. Weight is more complex than food choices and exercise regimen. So it's a very tricky time in our lives to try to stay, to keep our weight managed and balanced appropriately. So finding a way to increase some strength training, small, doable. Now, what are some small steps? If you're currently doing no exercise whatsoever, what can you do that's small? Maybe the first day you just simply put on a pair of tennis shoes and walk around the house, knowing that maybe you're going to walk outside and go for a 10-minute walk. So slow baby incremental steps forward. All right, here are some general tips that support weight management. So avoid restrictive diets. They are simply not going to sustain effective weight loss. You're typically will be off that diet and maybe even regain everything that you lost from the beginning. Extreme exercise plans and lots of different cleanses do that same thing. They might work for the short term, but for the long term, they're not sustainable. So we really want to arrange most of our meals around a plate that's filled with non-starchy vegetables and moderate portions of lean protein and whole starch. So measuring, a lot of times it's important to measure out portions, especially when you're starting to try to manage your weight. Well, often we are eating much more than the daily recommended amount. Portions, particularly in things like nuts, oils, seeds, making sure that nuts are great for you in moderation, 1 or 2 tablespoons, but it's easy to have a third of a cup if you're not measuring it out. All of a sudden you had half a bag of cashews. So set some smart goals for lifestyle habits that you can do on a daily basis, like eating vegetables, increasing your water intake to stay hydrated and satiate your appetite. So, an example of a SMART goal is I will add a green salad to my lunch 3 days a week. So, SMART goals are specific and measurable. We've talked about this. Specific is the S, measurable is the M, attainable, realistic and relative, and then T is the time bound. So, give yourself permission to enjoy fun foods, to have some desserts and snack foods. But do them in appropriate portions as part of a balanced eating pattern. And when it comes to beverages, choosing mostly unsweetened beverages, water, seltzer, tea, limited amounts of coffee, and avoiding or limiting alcohol, as we've talked about in earlier weeks. Getting adequate sleep, so important. Getting about 7 to 9 hours for adults, and then lastly, engaging in stress management techniques. So all these can help with weight management. It's not just about food. So if you need additional support in any of these areas, I'm happy to set up a free consult with you. You can click the link that'll be available throughout the portal to schedule a free consult. Soy and phytoestrogen. So soy foods, they kind of mimic estrogens. Soy yogurt, soy milk, tempeh, tofu, edamame. These are a type of phytoestrogen that are similar in structure to estrogen. So in some cases, they have shown to significantly reduce symptoms such as hot flashes. So it's not 100% proven, but in many cases it's shown in some women that it helps minimize menopause symptoms. All right, let's kind of do a wrap up here, looking at what we've already talked about, and just sort of putting it all together. So to optimize nutrition during perimenopause and menopause. So typically menopause, that transition into menopause, is about 7 years, but it can last as long as 14 years. So living through an extensive period of change with these potentially severe symptoms may require treatment. Treatment is really difficult for many women. These hormonal changes are inevitable. However, we can control through lifestyle habits and optimizing nutrition a lot of these symptoms and make an easier transition into menopause. We do this by prioritizing what we drink, by having adequate fluids, eating nutrient dense foods, and managing weight, all of which we've discussed. We try to limit or avoid alcohol, spicy foods, and caffeine. And then, in addition to practicing a balanced way of eating, other lifestyle habits matter, very much so. Stress management um, can lower cortisol levels and help with sleep. Exercising regularly, a physical activity guidelines for Americans recommends that adults practice or have some sort of physical activity that's at least 150 minutes to 300 minutes of moderate physical activity a week. And in two of those, at least two of those, being strength training, super important for building and supporting bone health. Again, this is where supplements might be helpful. And then sleep, developing a sleep protocol or hygiene that helps you achieve and sustain good sleep. Healthy habits for sleep and rest are essential to achieve optimal health and wellness. And it is particularly critical during all phases during menopause. It's critical during all phases of life, but particularly in menopause. Poor sleep is linked to dementia, higher levels of cortisol and stress, and poor eating. So be sure and review and go through all the cooking videos that are in this week's session or lesson, as well as in the previous weeks. You can go back and review those. They are there. Like I said, you have lifetime access. I will continue to add recipes. And after this lesson, you will complete a knowledge check in your portal where you will name at least one nutrient during menopause and explain why it's important. And then 2 strategies for optimizing nutrition during perimenopause and menopause. You will also have an opportunity to complete your personal SMART goal with an action plan for the week, that encourages self-efficacy, helping you prepare nutrient-dense meals and snacks that support your health during perimenopause and menopause. Take advantage of all the resources in this lesson as well as in previous ones, cooking videos, handouts, recipes. These resources will help you and support you in bringing this lesson to life in your kitchen. So we have now completed lesson 4 and the course. I will continue to monitor your portal and continue to add things as I'm able. These are ways to connect with me. I will also be putting in the portal links to set up a consult with me or to take a peek at the full script supplement catalogs. I'll have one set up in particular that's for menopausal health. As always, reach out if you have questions. I am a imperfect human, so I'm sure there are errors in this 4-week program. I would love feedback from you. If you caught something that needs attention, I'm happy to correct or change it or to clarify anything that feels unclear to you. I hope that this has been helpful and that you will continue to navigate menopause in a healthy and optimal fashion. Take care.